invisible. And, so what we've always envisioned, and now we have concrete steps, is building a level playing field where any candidate across the aisle of any political belief, any party, can actually get visibility. And selling it, it's not just a tech platform. Yes, technology is a big part of this, but it's a new way to do politics. And we get into some of the features, like the civic tagging feature is a big one that we'll get into, but just different ways that grassroots candidates can actually differentiate themselves. This is where I stand. I actually have a stance. I actually have a plan for issues. We're at the stage where even the media doesn't even hold them accountable. Several decades ago, at least, the media would hold them somewhat accountable. Now, like, you have independent media and journalists, but the mainstream media, they just take their partisan sides and that's it. But yeah, so we have a system where we're trying to connect with different candidates. We have a bigger focus on Nevada specifically during this primary, but we want to take every candidate nationwide that wants to set up. They create a profile, and then our job is to just continually funnel disaffected voters, people that just want change. I mean, even people that don't want change, they want to look up, or they want to see, what are my actual choices, not just what the establishment tells me my choice is. What are my actual choices? Who is actually running? And then as this grows, we'll have different data to show, like, who is gaining traction, who is viable, not just because the establishment says they're viable, because they're actually gaining popularity with the American people. We have the features, we have the system, and now it's all about getting more and more buy-in from the candidates as well as citizens.
This is the time to shine. This is where it's going to be different. It's like you said, if the media doesn't necessarily pay attention to you, you're getting no attention, right? And then if the media does pay attention to you, if the fact is that you're not really keeping up with your promises, the hypocrisy comes to story. Well, so-and-so didn't keep up with his promises. Why are we holding so accountable? The media is not really doing the story a favor. They're not really telling the story the way it should be told. What they're doing is, like I've always said, and I think I've even said it with you, or maybe not. The reason the Vietnam War was so unpopular wasn't because it was war. It was because it was the first time it was televised. So now we've got this enormous social media connection with politics. And what they're doing is just building a narrative that interests people, not necessarily the voter that voted for the candidate. They're just building a narrative that interests the people. And if they're going to sell media time via social media, you got to interest the people just as well as if you're going to sell Super Bowl commercial time. The Super Bowl interests the people. But what you've done is now you're making a connection where something that's very important to somebody, that somebody can look at this website, go to that candidate and say, is he really delivering on what he says? I am literally considering, and I don't know how far I'll get, but I'm literally considering a Jeff Rabinowitz, Coach Trippy podcaster for president website. And I want not necessarily to be the next president of the United States, but I want to talk about what's important to me. And one of the things is an enormous investment in education. And so let's just say I'm that candidate that has no chance of even being on the ballot in all 50 states. But I bring to the attention the idea that education is the key to solving a lot of these problems, right? And then you have that opportunity to get me to know me as a candidate through FINC. I mean, that's what you're doing, correct?
Right now, it's called the Digital Politics Hub. That's where our candidate discovery is in. It's the earlier stages of digital democracy. Basically, you would have your own profile on our system. A lot of it's going to revolve around the tagging system. So there's 3 types of tags. They're all called civic tags. One of them is the about me. So that's, I'm a veteran, I'm a parent, like, who am I as a person? 2 is your political lens tag. That one's unique, where you could say, I'm filed as a Republican, but I identify as libertarian and populist. And you could create different tags. There's a drop down of choices, plus you could customize your own, you could define your own. And then the third one is advocacy tags of, like, education and certain keywords for your advocacy. So each of those is a key to differentiate yourself. As we know, young people have a low attention span, and it's kind of like a new form of hashtags where, instead of reading paragraphs and paragraphs or an essay of what somebody's going to do on policies, they could just see these keywords, these tags. And then as we gain traction, we're going to see, like, citizens can thumbs up, thumbs down tags that they like, they dislike, they can follow certain tags. So there might be somebody that just cares about the issue you're identifying, whether it's education, maybe there's a specific keyword that you use. maybe there's different candidates all nationwide that start following your policy stance and they start using your tag. And then like citizens can search, I want to see every candidate nationwide that aligns with that specific tag, that keyword. So it allows a more fluid way to group candidates and identify a set of candidates. In certain states, there's candidates that are a Republican. In some states, they're independent. Sometimes they're third party. That doesn't matter. That's like you're filed as a party, but where does your identity really lie? Sometimes you have to run two parties to just have any viability. Sometimes people decide to go independent. We want to have a system where it doesn't matter on our end. You plug in to the current system, however you have to plug in, but then you can identify however you want with these different taggings. So yeah, you would essentially have your own website, but you would also funnel people to your profile on the Digital Politics Hub. And then there's also a thing called a candidate card, is like a snapshot of your profile on our system, but that you could share on other platforms. So you could share your candidate card on your website, on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, wherever you want to share it. It's like a quick little snapshot of your profile, and it'll have a link that sends you directly to your FINC profile to learn more, so people can learn more about you, as well as if there's other candidates that align with you or are under your kind of grouping of identity.
And that's just incredible that you just said that, because here you go. So I tell my story, right? And then I say, I am registered Democrat. I identify as capitalist. I love the idea of capitalism. I want to do well. I've got no complaints with my share of the bounty, but I want to do well. And I really like this. And I really like the fact that you just get to know this person, because when I ran for an office for Democrats, I had Democrats call me, have you gotten to 50,000 yet? I haven't even gotten to 5,000 yet. So then when I said what I said, which seems to throw everybody, I'm not really into this to raise money. I'm into this to raise awareness. And they were like, okay, then you're just an idiot. And there you go. That's where the dysfunction comes between you and the coverage. That's where they've lost interest in you. And then they are the ones that control the switches that get the interest back, or take the interest away, for that matter.
Yeah.
So now we've got an incredible opportunity. And granted, I think sometimes you preface, we're not there yet, but you are getting there at a rapid pace.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is, you will be there. And I think you'll be there in a big way for the next presidential election. And that's fine if you're not there 100%, because there's a chance you never know how you're going to improve. 100% means what? It could be 20 years from now, and you're just taking over. And that could not even be 100%, because other people are going to do what you're doing, which is great. That's an incredible thing, that we're going to change the whole idea of politics. And we need to in America. That's what we're yearning for. People are full of information, but we need to start getting into the notion of providing some level of wisdom too. We can't necessarily just go on, this guy tried this and he bullshitted his way through that. We got that. We got all the memos, and we got all the hypocrisies, and we got all the comparisons. Now let's get to answers. How do we prevent some of those mistakes? So, and like I said, I think I'm getting there too, on this whole idea of not necessarily even thinking for a minute that I'm going to beat the entire system back and be elected the next president of the United States. But the fact of the matter is, I've got some ideas that people can really identify with, and I want to be a part of that through the podcast, through the campaign website, and I really want to, and partnering with you guys. So there are candidates who generally want to fight for your party, but there's the party gatekeepers. Just like I said, the minute the party called me, and the question was always, are you at the 50,000? They want to see the account. You can't just say yes. They literally want to see the documentation. And then we don't take, they've literally said, this is officials from the Democratic Party, we don't take you serious until you're at the 50,000 mark. And it's like, okay, well, I'm very serious. Been doing this now for years. I've got people always interested in what I'm doing. So you may not take me serious, but I can assure you I'm serious. So, and that's a great question. Stop asking left or right. Let's talk about stop asking left or right. Let's talk about, I did kind of beat up the point of what we're asking for is reality, but what are we asking for from you?
Yeah, so we really want people to understand, like, yeah, everyone's going to have their left versus right lens to some extent, but like the deeper issue is up versus down. So up-serving candidates are the ones, they serve big donors, power. They turn to those with higher power to lift them up into power themselves, where down-serving candidates are the ones that they're the grassroots candidates. They gain power by gaining voter support. So they get volunteers, they get massive amount of voter turnout, they could get young voters and new voters, people register to vote just to vote for them. And so those are the down-serving candidates. And people don't know, like, they kind of subconsciously, a lot of people know these things, but like, the data is there. You can see it's all a matter of like how much big money they take, how much are their conflicts of interest, how many super PACs do they have, what industries is that, is there a direct conflict of interest from the money they take? So we want people to understand, like, even if Congress was 50-50 Democrat and Republican, but they didn't have the conflicts of interest, or each of their goal was, I need my voters to be happier, I need them to have a better life, better economy, better healthcare, that then even if it's 50-50 Democrat, Republican, they would find a way to compromise. They would find ways to push bills in that actually help the people. The problem is it's not about ideology split. It's that all of them have a conflict of interest. How on earth can you fix healthcare if every single person has like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign funding directly from big pharma and private health insurance? They give you that money so that you don't fix the healthcare, because fixing healthcare will limit their profits as big pharma and healthcare. So we want people to understand you have to follow the money, and that there's these conflicts of interest, and as we're saying, the gatekeepers, it's a concentration of power is the real battles. The American people, it's not about left or right. Everyone feels we're not being represented. Trust in government, all-time low. Trust in media, all-time low. People know that democracy has been crumbling over the last several years. They get stuck because, like, as soon as somebody attacks Trump, then we're all conditioned that now Republicans are going to defend him because you're attacking Trump. They assume you're promoting Democrats. And it's like, no, both sides have a lot of problems. Both sides need to be changed. This whole system is not working for most people. And so we need to get out of that. Like, just because I say bad things about one party does not mean I'm saying the other side's better. I'm just saying that they both have problems, and we need to change out all of the people and almost everyone in both sides. So that's the up-down model, as we call it, part of the digital politics lens.
And that's incredible because, like you said, you're attracting volunteers. So you probably don't remember because I'm a lot older. There's a candidate, Ross Perot, and he literally created a volunteer system in all 50 states and ultimately worked and got him on the ballot in all 50 states. Now, he said he was willing to use up to his own personal money $100 million. That's a figure he threw out there numerous times. At that time, that was a lot of money. Today, it's not a lot of money. Today, they're in the billions now to run for president. But he didn't spend I don't think he spent a big percentage of that $100 million to get those signatures needed to be on the ballot. One of the things he was doing, which I thought he was doing wrong, was he would say, we're on the ballot in Florida, we're on the ballot in Ohio. And they were saying, stop saying that. Let them keep getting signatures because it creates a momentum. But the minute you say we're on the ballot in Ohio, you're losing your volunteers. Your volunteers are no longer out there getting signatures. And let's get more. Let's just keep getting more. Be that as it may, that's the whole idea of my candidacies. If I were to run, is I just want to be on the ballot in 50 states, and create that volunteer enthusiasm that gets you there, right? And my idea is just like you said, healthcare. When you say about special interests, rumor had it that the Affordable Care Act, which I think does work is better than anything we've ever had, which it is the first thing we've ever had. So, okay, but special interest wrote the bill. And then they sent it to either the Congress or the president. So this was an interesting thing. I said, now here's something very interesting. And recently I realized that I have a friend who is on my podcast. She just got her portrait placed at the Smithsonian for all her great work. When we were talking, she had mentioned 3 other people with her, the 4 that year. I never knew there was this process, but there's 4, I guess, a year. One of the other persons was Steven Spielberg, which I thought Steven fits in. The next one was Jamie Dimon. And I just found that hilarious because Jamie Dimon was the guy that said, I like regulation. It's not that Jamie Dimon likes banking regulation. He writes banking regulation. He sends it to the Congress, and it's intended to bankrupt most local community banks and put him in the driver's seat of most banking in America. So the irony of it all wasn't, I don't know that he was a good executive. I don't know that he made his shareholders billions of dollars. I'm not dissecting that. I'm just saying the idea of him literally being revered and hung his portrait at the Smithsonian, and nobody realizes there's another side to him. And it's that special interest side. And this is what goes on in America behind the curtains all the time. It's like, and the same thing with the Affordable Care Act. I have always said I think it works. I think, well, obviously it's the only thing we've ever had. So generally speaking, it's kind of like a starving person that gets Ritz crackers. They think it's a fillet. I mean, so okay, but the fact of the matter is, special interest wrote the bill. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that they didn't do fairly accomplish a lot for something that hadn't been touched since our conception as a union. But the fact of the matter is, special interest wrote the bill. There's a lot of
Oh yeah.
real time information. That's what happened.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, and the stats show, I forget, I have a stat somewhere. A lot of there's that like ton, like a huge percentage, I don't know if it's like 15, 20% of bills are written by the special interest that's meant to regulate it. So that's an ongoing thing to this day, that a lot of bills, people don't realize, like the people that profit from it are actually writing the regulations to regulate themselves. Like that is, you cannot get somebody to regulate themselves. That's an oxymoron, essentially. It's
right,
crazy.
it's like the inmates running the asylum. It's basically
Yeah,
that
yeah,
simple. It really
yeah.
is just that. And people don't realize that lobbyists, when we say lobbyists, we use the term lobbyists. Why are they called lobbyists? Because they stand in lobbies waiting in line to go to a hearing room to hear what's going on in Congress and how they're going to manipulate it. And then as they're leaving their room, they may even address the congressman who are voicing opinions and say, hey, by the way, we really didn't like what you had to say, but what we do like is this, and we do have this in return. And so then comes what's funny is now, as they call them line